friends, welcome back to my channel. This is Rim from rimsartsyvibes and I welcome you back to another brand new episode of my channel. So first of all, I would like to thank each and every follower of my channel. There has been an addition of quite a few followers on my channel in the last week. So I'm really grateful to each and every one of them. Thank you everyone for supporting me and motivating me. I'm really grateful and thankful to each one of you. I hope to live up to your expectations. Moving on, today's episode will be a watercolor tutorial. I'll be doing a portrait with watercolor and I hope you will like today's episode as well. So please stay tuned. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video.
Since I'm not a thorough watercolor artist, I only use watercolors occasionally, and so I don't use very expensive watercolors. I have just very few inexpensive watercolor brands. For example, this one. Another great thing about watercolor is that if there is ever any extra bit of watercolor paint on your palette, then there is always an opportunity to reactivate it with little bit of water and it is ready to go. For brushes, I am using these watercolor brushes and one flat brush, and for the paper I am using this 300 GSM watercolor paper. As you can see, I am applying a wet wash on the entire paper, and there is a valid reason for this. A wet wash applied to watercolor paper goes through different drying phases. This is referred to as the water cycle. In general, the paper undergoes 4 distinct states that you should look out for, which is dry, damp, moist and wet. These states affect the way pigments react on the paper surface. Water control is one of the biggest struggles for new watercolor artists. Most issues revolve around the wetness of the paper and the wetness of the brush. Here I am applying the first layer of paint, and here I am following the wet on wet technique where I am applying all the colors while the other colors are still wet and while the paper is still wet. And also observe that the watercolor lightens when it dries. Watercolor always undergoes a drying shift. In other words, they lighten and lose some of their color saturation. So if we already understand this rule, we know how to compensate by using a slightly stronger pigment concentration when we mix colors. If you are not a watercolor artist and if you have come to watercolor from other traditional paints, for example oils or acrylics, for example me, so it means you have to relearn the painting process. You know why? Because painting with watercolor often requires a bit of forward planning, which means watercolors are painted in reverse compared to other types of paint medium. So it means relearning the painting process. Do you know what sets watercolors completely different from any other painting medium? It is the fact that we have to always work from light to dark with watercolors. Since watercolors are transparent in nature, so this transparency means that each layer of paint in watercolors allows the layers underneath to show through to some extent. So, starting with lighter colors allows for a gradual build-up of tonal values and shades. And yes, do you notice that there are some places where I have left some paper whites? This is because in watercolors, white always comes from the paper. Watercolor is a bit different than oils or gouache. Instead of slapping on white paint, the white and lighter tones actually come from the paper itself. This is another reason why we tend to paint from light to dark, as I have already mentioned earlier. So any white shapes need to be planned in advance. And yes, since watercolors are transparent, this also leads us to the technique known as glazing. Artists can achieve remarkable effects by applying multiple layers of colors. Glazing involves overlaying one transparent wash of color onto a previously dried layer of paint. Exactly what I am doing right now. Each underlying hue influences the final appearance, and artists can build up layers to intensify tones and create subtle blends in their paintings. It's a bit like color mixing directly on the paper, using layer upon layer to create the final result. This transparency introduces depth and complexity to watercolor artworks. As you have already noticed in this painting that I have used both the watercolor techniques here, that is wet on wet and wet on dry. Wet on wet involves applying paint to a wet surface, which I did exactly at the beginning of this painting. And wet on dry involves applying paint to a dry surface that I am applying at the later stages to do the detailings. This gives precise control over our brush marks, and it's great for creating fine details and sharp lines. Mastering these two techniques of wet on wet and wet on dry enables artists to navigate between controlled precision and free-flowing expression. And yes, as always, my art teacher always told me to never ever use black in my paintings. So here I am mixing a lot of colors to create this hair. So I am mixing a little bit of blue, little bit of crimson, and little bit of brown also to make this color. Using a mix of complementary colors to create dark hues produces more vibrant neutral colors. It allows for a subtler, more nuanced range of tones for shadows and shading. Using the same colors as a subject for mixing your blacks will harmonize them more effectively with the overall painting. So next time you are tempted to grab that black tube, pause for a moment and consider the vibrant spectrum of colors at your disposal. Now it's time to splash some colors in the background that will make my portrait painting a little more vibrant and funky and colorful.
So hey, how did you like today's video? I hope you liked today's video as well, and if you really did, then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share and subscribe to my channel if you already haven't. And yes, if you are already a subscriber and haven't yet clicked on the bell notification below, then please go down below and click on the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any update from my channel. Anyways, I'm also there on Facebook and Instagram. My Facebook page is rimsartsyvibes and the name of my Instagram page is rims_artsy_vibes. So I hope you'll be able to follow me there as well. It will just help to keep me motivated, nothing else. We will meet next week with another long video. Till then, keep painting and keep enjoying your art journey. Bye bye.